It was an ordinary Friday evening in the Thompson household, but for 16-year-old Jake it felt anything but ordinary. The aroma of his mother's famous lasagna wafted through the air, mingling with the sound of laughter from the dining room. It was a family ritual, a time to gather around the table, share stories, and enjoy each other's company. But tonight Jake had a heavy weight on his shoulders, a secret he had stumbled upon that threatened to unravel everything he thought he knew about his family. As he set the table, Jake's mind raced back to earlier that week when he had been rummaging through the attic. He was looking for old board games to entertain his younger sister, Lily, when he came across a dusty box tucked away in a corner. Curiosity piqued. He opened it and discovered a collection of old letters and photographs. One photo caught his eye, his mother young and radiant, standing next to a man Jake had never seen before. They were smiling broadly, arms wrapped around each other as if they were posing for a magazine cover. Flipping through the letters, Jake's heart sank. They were addressed to his mother from someone named Daniel. The tone of the letters was intimate, filled with affection and longing. As Jake read on, he learned that Daniel was not just a friend, he was someone who had been deeply involved in his mother's life, long before Jake or Lily were even born. The final letter sent chills down his spine. It hinted at a relationship that ended abruptly, leaving unresolved feelings and unanswered questions. Jake's mind raced with possibilities. Who was this Daniel? Why had his mother never mentioned him? And what did this mean for their family? He couldn't shake off the feeling that there was more to this story than met the eye. As he set down the last fork on the table, he made a decision: he would confront his mother tonight. Dinner began as it always did, with light banter about school and work. His father, Mark Thompson, cracked jokes about his day at the office while Lily giggled at her dad's antics. But Jake felt like an outsider in his own home. Every laugh echoed in his ears like a reminder of the secret he carried. "Jake, you're awfully quiet tonight," his mother, Sarah, said as she served herself another helping of lasagna. She looked at him with concern etched on her face. Her warm brown eyes sparkled under the soft glow of the dining room lights, but Jake could see a flicker of worry there too. "Just thinking," Jake replied, forcing a smile. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest as he prepared himself for what lay ahead. As they ate, Jake's mind raced through scenarios of how to approach the topic without causing chaos at the dinner table. Should he wait until after dinner, or should he just blurt it out? He decided that waiting would only prolong the tension building inside him. Finally, as they finished their meal and moved on to dessert, his mother's homemade chocolate cake, Jake took a deep breath and set down his fork. "Mom," he began hesitantly, "there's something I need to talk to you about." The room fell silent. His father looked up from his plate with raised eyebrows while Lily paused mid-bite, sensing the shift in atmosphere. "What is it, honey?" Sarah asked gently but with an edge of concern. Jake swallowed hard. "I found something in the attic. Some letters and photos." He glanced at his mother's face and saw her expression change from curiosity to apprehension. "Letters? What kind of letters?" she asked cautiously. "They were from someone named Daniel," Jake continued, feeling a mix of fear and determination. "Who is he? Why have you never talked about him?" Sarah's face paled slightly as she exchanged glances with Mark. The tension in the air thickened as Jake pressed on. "I need to know why you kept this from us." His mother took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she set down her fork. "Jake, I didn't think it mattered anymore," she said softly. But it did matter, at least to Jake. The truth felt like an avalanche ready to crash down on their seemingly perfect family dinner. As silence enveloped them once more, Jake knew that this moment would change everything. The silence in the dining room was deafening. Jake's heart raced as he watched his mother's face shift from surprise to something resembling dread. He could sense the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air, and he felt an urgent need to push for answers. "Mom, please," he urged, leaning forward in his chair. "I need to know who Daniel is and why I've never heard about him. This isn't just some old letters, it's a part of your life that you've kept hidden from us." Sarah looked down at her plate, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of the tablecloth. "Jake, I didn't want to bring up the past. It was a long time ago and I thought it was behind me." "But it's not behind you if you've never talked about it," Jake replied, his voice rising slightly in frustration. "It feels like there's a whole side of our family history that we don't know about." Mark, sensing the tension escalating, interjected gently. "Sarah, maybe it's time to share this with Jake. He deserves to know." Jake glanced at his father, grateful for his support, but also anxious about what might come next. His mother took a deep breath and finally met Jake's gaze. "Daniel was someone I loved very much before I met your father," she began slowly. "We were young and naive, caught up in our own world. We had plans for a future together." Jake felt a knot tighten in his stomach as he listened intently. "What happened?" he asked quietly. Sarah hesitated, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Life happened," she said softly. "I was young and made choices that led me down a different path. When I met your father, I thought I could leave that part of my life behind. But Daniel, he never really left my heart." Lily, who had been quietly observing the conversation, finally spoke up. "But why didn't you ever tell us? Was he bad? Did something happen?" Her innocent questions hung heavily in the air. "No, sweetheart," Sarah replied quickly, trying to reassure her daughter. "He wasn't bad at all. In fact, he was a wonderful person. But things got complicated when I found out I was pregnant with Jake." Jake's breath caught in his throat as he processed her words. "Pregnant? With me?" "Yes," Sarah confirmed, her voice trembling slightly. "I had to make a choice between staying with Daniel or starting a new life with your father. It was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make." Jake felt a whirlwind of emotions, anger, confusion, and sadness all mixed together. "So you chose Dad over him?" "I chose what I thought was best for you," she replied earnestly. "I loved your father and believed we could build a happy family together. But what if Daniel wanted to be part of my life? What if he wanted to know me?" Jake pressed on, feeling a surge of frustration. Sarah began but faltered as she searched for the right words. "I thought it would be easier if we just moved on without bringing him into our lives." Mark leaned forward, his expression serious yet compassionate. "Son, sometimes people make decisions they believe are for the best at that moment. Your mother loved you enough to protect you from potential pain." "But what about my right to know my own family history?" Jake shot back, feeling tears prick at his eyes. Before Sarah could respond, Jake stood up abruptly from the table. The chair scraped loudly against the floor as he paced back and forth in the small dining room. "I can't believe this," he exclaimed, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "All this time I thought we were a normal family with no secrets. And now I find out that there's this whole hidden chapter that changes everything." Mark called out firmly but gently. "Sit down and let your mother finish." Reluctantly, Jake returned to his seat but crossed his arms defiantly over his chest. "Please," Sarah said softly, her voice steadying as she continued. "I never meant to hurt you or keep anything from you. It was just easier to forget than to explain everything." "Easier for whom?" Jake challenged. "For all of us," she replied quietly. The room was thick with tension as everyone absorbed Sarah's admission. Lily looked between her parents and brother, confusion etched on her young face. Finally, Sarah spoke again, her voice breaking slightly as she continued sharing her story. "After I chose your father and we started our life together, Daniel moved away. But he never stopped writing to me." "What do you mean?" Jake asked incredulously. "I received letters from him for years," Sarah admitted reluctantly. "He wanted to know how I was doing and if I had any regrets, but I never responded after marrying your father." Jake felt a mix of emotions swirling inside him, betrayal for being kept in the dark and sympathy for his mother's struggle with her past choices. "Did you ever think about reaching out to him?" he asked softly. Sarah nodded slowly, tears spilling down her cheeks now. "Every day. But I didn't want to disrupt what we had built as a family." As silence enveloped them once more, Jake realized that this revelation wasn't just about him, it was about understanding his mother, a woman who had faced difficult choices and lived with their consequences. But even as compassion began to bloom within him, another question loomed large: what did this mean for their family moving forward? The atmosphere in the Thompson household was thick with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. Jake sat at the table, his mind swirling with thoughts about his mother's revelations. The once comforting space now felt foreign, charged with tension and uncertainty. He glanced at Lily, who was still trying to make sense of the situation, her innocent eyes wide with confusion. Mom, Jake finally said, breaking the heavy silence. Do you ever think about what it would be like if Daniel were part of our lives? If you had made a different choice? Sarah looked down, her fingers trembling as she wiped away a tear. I think about it more than I'd like to admit, she confessed. But I chose your father because I believed he could give you a stable life, a life I thought would be better without complications. But it feels like you made that decision for me without even asking, Jake replied, his voice tinged with hurt. What if I wanted to know him? What if he wanted to know me? Mark shifted in his seat, sensing the rising tension again. Jake, your mother was trying to protect you. It's not easy to navigate these kinds of decisions. Protect me from what? Jake shot back, frustration bubbling over. From knowing my own family history? From understanding who I am? From potential heartache, Sarah interjected softly. I didn't want to open old wounds or bring someone into our lives who could disrupt everything we had built together. But you didn't think about how this would affect me, Jake exclaimed, standing up again and pacing the room. I feel like there's this whole part of my identity that's been hidden from me. Lily watched her brother with wide eyes, clearly distressed by the escalating argument. Jake, please stop yelling, she pleaded, her voice small and shaky. Realizing he was raising his voice in front of his sister, Jake took a deep breath and tried to calm himself. I'm sorry, Lily, he said softly, returning to his seat. I don't understand. Sarah reached out across the table and placed her hand on Jake's arm. I know this is hard for you to process. It's hard for me too. I never wanted to keep secrets from you. I thought I was doing what was best. Best for whom? Jake repeated quietly, staring at his mother's hand on his arm as if it were a lifeline he wasn't sure he wanted to grasp. Mark cleared his throat, attempting to steer the conversation toward a more constructive path. Maybe we should all take some time to think about what we've just learned, he suggested gently. This is a lot for everyone to digest. Jake nodded slowly but felt a surge of anger rising again. But what if I want to know more about Daniel? What if I want to reach out to him? Jake, Sarah began but hesitated again, clearly torn between her past and her present. I need answers, Jake insisted. If he cared enough to write you all those letters, maybe he deserves a chance to be part of my life. Do you even know what you're asking? Sarah replied, her voice rising slightly in desperation. Reopening old wounds can bring back pain that we've worked so hard to move past. But isn't it better than living a lie? Jake countered passionately. What if Daniel is someone who could help me understand where I come from? What if he has answers that could change everything? Mark watched as the tension escalated again between mother and son. He felt helpless but knew they needed to navigate this emotional minefield carefully. Let's not rush into anything, Mark finally said, trying to mediate. We need time to think this through as a family. Jake felt an overwhelming sense of loss wash over him. Loss for the relationship he had with his mother before this moment, and loss for the possibility of knowing someone who could have been part of his life all along. I just don't understand how you could keep this from us, Jake said quietly, looking down at his plate as tears threatened to spill from his eyes. Sarah squeezed his arm gently before withdrawing her hand. I thought it was best for everyone, she repeated softly, her own eyes glistening with unshed tears. Lily broke the silence again, her small voice cutting through the tension. Can we just go back to how things were before? She asked innocently. Jake looked at his little sister and felt a pang of guilt for dragging her into this turmoil. He wished things could go back to normal too, when family dinners were filled with laughter instead of heartache. Lily, Sarah began but stopped herself as she realized that nothing would ever be the same after tonight. As dinner came to an end and they cleared the table in silence, Jake felt an emptiness inside him that he couldn't quite articulate. The family dynamic had shifted irreparably, and he knew they were standing at a crossroads. Once they finished cleaning up, Mark suggested they all take some time apart to gather their thoughts before reconvening later in the evening. Let's meet back here in an hour, he proposed gently. We can talk more then, maybe even discuss how we want to approach Daniel if that's what we decide. Reluctantly, everyone nodded in agreement and dispersed into their separate corners of the house. Jake retreated to his room, feeling overwhelmed by emotions swirling within him, anger at his mother for hiding the truth and sadness for what might have been. He sat on his bed with his phone in hand, staring at the screen as if it held answers he desperately sought. Should he look up Daniel? Should he reach out? The thought filled him with both excitement and dread. As he pondered these questions in solitude, one thing became clear. Whatever happened next would change their family forever. Jake sat on his bed, the silence of his room amplifying the chaos in his mind. He felt like he was caught in a storm, with emotions swirling around him, confusion, anger, and a deep-seated yearning for answers. The confrontation at dinner had left him reeling, and now he needed to figure out what to do next. After what felt like an eternity, there was a soft knock on his door. It was Lily. "Can I come in?" she asked hesitantly. "Yeah," Jake replied, forcing a smile despite the turmoil inside him. Lily entered, her small frame looking even smaller against the backdrop of Jake's cluttered room. She climbed onto his bed and sat cross-legged beside him. "I didn't like it when you were yelling," she said quietly. "It made me feel sad." Jake sighed, guilt washing over him. "I'm sorry, Lily. I didn't mean to scare you." "Why are you so mad at Mom?" she asked innocently. "It's complicated," Jake replied, searching for the right words. "I just found out something really big about our family that I didn't know before." "Like what?" she pressed, her curiosity piqued. "Like, there's this guy named Daniel who used to be important to Mom before she met Dad," Jake explained carefully, "and I feel like I should know more about him." Lily frowned in thought. "But Mom loves Dad, right? And we're a family." Jake nodded, appreciating her simple perspective. "Yes, we are a family, but sometimes families have secrets that can make things confusing." Lily tilted her head, trying to understand. "Do you think Daniel is nice?" "I don't know," Jake admitted. "I've never met him. But I feel like I need to find out more about who he is and why he was so important to Mom." Lily remained quiet for a moment before speaking again. "Maybe if you meet him, it will help everyone feel better?" Jake considered her words. Maybe meeting Daniel could provide clarity, not just for him, but for his entire family. He wanted to understand his mother's past and how it shaped their present. "Thanks, Lily," he said softly, giving her a reassuring smile. "You always know how to make me think." Just then there was another knock on the door. This time it was Mark. He stepped into the room with a gentle expression on his face. "Mind if I join you two?" he asked. "Sure," Jake replied as Mark sat down on the edge of the bed. "I wanted to check in after dinner," Mark said, looking between Jake and Lily. "How are you both doing?" "I'm okay," Lily said quickly. "But Jake is mad at Mom." Mark turned his attention to Jake, who shifted uncomfortably under his father's gaze. "I'm not mad at her," Jake clarified. "I just feel betrayed, I guess. It's hard knowing that there's this whole part of our family history that we didn't know about." Mark nodded thoughtfully. "It's understandable to feel that way. Secrets can be difficult to process, especially when they involve people we care about." Jake looked up at his father, seeking guidance. "Do you think I should reach out to Daniel? Find out more about him?" Mark paused for a moment before responding. "That's a big decision, son. It could lead to answers, but also bring up feelings that may be hard for your mother to deal with again." "I get that," Jake replied earnestly. "But don't you think it's better to know than to live in ignorance? If Daniel cared enough to write letters all those years ago, maybe he deserves a chance to be part of my life." Mark regarded his son with admiration for his courage, but also concern for the potential fallout. "You're right. Knowledge is important, but it's also essential to consider how this might affect your mother and your family as a whole." Lily piped up again, her voice full of innocence and wisdom beyond her years. "Maybe if we all talk together about it, we can figure it out as a family." Jake smiled at his sister's suggestion. It was simple, yet profound, a reminder that they were all in this together. "Okay," Mark said slowly, nodding in agreement with Lily's idea. How about we all sit down together and talk about this? We can discuss what reaching out to Daniel would mean for each of us." Feeling a sense of relief wash over him, Jake nodded enthusiastically. "I'd like that." As they left the room together, Lily skipping ahead while Mark walked beside Jake, he felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. Maybe they could navigate this complicated situation as a family after all. A short while later, they gathered back in the living room where Sarah sat on the couch, her expression weary but resolute as she prepared for another round of difficult conversations. "Thank you for coming back together," she said softly as they settled into their seats. Jake looked at his mother and took a deep breath before speaking up first. "Mom, I want to understand more about Daniel and why you kept him from us." Sarah nodded slowly as she braced herself for what lay ahead. "I think we should consider reaching out to him," Jake continued earnestly. "I want to know who he is and why he mattered so much in your life." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed Jake's words, each person reflecting on their own feelings regarding this new chapter in their lives. Finally, Sarah spoke up again with newfound determination in her voice. "If that's what you want, then I'll support you, but I need you all to understand that this will not be easy." Mark reached over and took Sarah's hand reassuringly, while Lily looked between them with wide eyes filled with curiosity. "We'll face this together," Mark said firmly, squeezing Sarah's hand gently. As they sat together as a family, each member grappling with their own emotions, the path ahead seemed uncertain but filled with possibilities for healing and understanding. Her experiences after discovering the abandoned baby shaped her life in profound ways. She graduated high school with honors and earned a scholarship to a local university, where she pursued a degree in social work. Her heart was set on making a difference in the lives of vulnerable children, inspired by the memory of that fateful day in the park. Meanwhile, the baby Mia had found, who was named Lily by her foster parents, was growing up in a loving home. After being placed in foster care, Lily was eventually adopted by a kind couple who had longed for a child of their own. They provided her with everything she needed: love, security, and a nurturing environment. However, Lily often felt an emptiness inside her, a lingering question about her origins and why she had been abandoned. Lily's adoptive parents were open about her adoption from an early age. They encouraged her to ask questions and explore her feelings about her past. As she grew older, Lily became increasingly curious about her biological family. She often wondered what led to her being left alone in the park that day. Despite the warmth of her adoptive home, there was an undeniable void that she yearned to fill. In high school, Lily excelled academically and was actively involved in various extracurricular activities. She was known for her kindness and empathy toward others, traits that seemed to stem from her own experiences as an adopted child. Friends often remarked on how mature she was for her age. They admired her ability to connect with those who faced challenges. One day during her senior year, while researching potential career paths, Lily stumbled upon social work as a field of study. The more she learned about it, the more it resonated with her own journey. She envisioned herself helping other children like herself, those who had experienced abandonment or loss, and providing them with the support they needed to thrive. As graduation approached, Lily decided to apply to universities with strong social work programs. Her adoptive parents were supportive of her decision and encouraged her to follow her dreams. They understood how important it was for Lily to find her own path and make sense of her past. On the day of graduation, as Lily stood on stage receiving her diploma, she felt a mix of pride and anticipation for what lay ahead. She knew that embarking on this new chapter would not only be about pursuing a career, but also about understanding herself better, about reconciling with the pieces of her identity that remained unknown. Meanwhile, Mia was also navigating significant changes in her life. After completing her degree in social work, she landed an internship at a local child welfare agency. The work was challenging, but rewarding. Every day brought new opportunities to advocate for children in foster care and help families navigate complex systems. Mia's passion for social work deepened as she encountered stories similar to hers, the stories of children waiting for forever homes and those who had experienced abandonment or neglect. Each case reminded her of Lily and fueled her desire to create positive change in their lives. One afternoon at work, Mia attended a meeting focused on an upcoming adoption event aimed at connecting families with children in foster care. As she listened to discussions about logistics and outreach strategies, something inside her stirred, a feeling that this event would be significant not just for the children but potentially for herself as well. As the event date approached, Mia dedicated herself wholeheartedly to its success. She spent countless hours organizing activities, reaching out to families interested in adoption, and ensuring that every child's story was represented with dignity and respect. On the day of the event, Mia arrived early at the community center filled with excitement and nervous energy. Colorful banners decorated the walls, showcasing success stories of families formed through adoption. Tables were set up with information about available children, each accompanied by photographs and personal narratives that highlighted their unique personalities. As families began to arrive, Mia moved through the crowd with purpose, greeting attendees and sharing information about each child's journey. She felt fulfilled knowing that this event could change lives forever. Amidst the hustle and bustle of the event, Mia noticed a young woman standing alone near one of the tables, displaying profiles of older children waiting for adoption. There was something familiar about her. Mia felt an inexplicable pull toward this stranger. Lily had come to the event seeking answers, hoping to learn more about adoption resources while also exploring potential connections with other adoptees. As she browsed through profiles of children available for adoption, she felt a mix of hope and trepidation. Perhaps today would bring clarity or closure regarding her own past.